Internecion Cube is an interesting one. On the one hand, it offers some of the most genuinely unnerving animated content I've ever seen here on YouTube. On the other hand...
Are you now confused at my intentions due to me being a Hot Mess Express, quirky baka gamer girl?
Anyways, it's been a little under 2 years since Internecion Cube Part 3 was released, so it's pretty safe to assume that people want answers to the questions they were left with. And trust me, there are a lot of questions. Well, seeing as how Liam is a bit preoccupied at the moment, it's probably going to be a minute before we get any official answers. Luckily, we don't need them, because Tyromaniac is on the case to piece together the clues and solve the mystery. So anyways, what's up my guys and gals, it's your boy Tyromaniac, back with another smoking hot video, and today, I'm here to talk about the lore of Internecion Cube. First off, I highly recommend you go watch Internecion Cube for yourself because there will be spoilers. The whole series is only 22 minutes long, so it's not too much of a hassle. Also, spoilers ahead for Murder Drones, Design, Yellow, Halogen, and Black Dogs. Now, time for a quick summary. Part 1 is where we first see Max, a 15-year-old boy, and Icon, more on her later, as they're being chased by government agents and unmarked windowless vans. Max asks Icon for help, so she injects explosives into his bloodstream because blah 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 God complex. Anyways, Max doesn't like this plan for some reason, so Icon instead decides to repurpose a helicopter, and its pilots, to make Max a new bike. Part 2 actually has 2 storylines. The first is where we first see Kirie Bonin, who's with her totally normal father, Hans, at Refinoc Biowaste management because he was forced to come into work on Thanksgiving. After meeting his totally normal coworkers, Kirie is left on her own in the break room just in time for the scary to happen. Kirie then wakes up much older, revealing that it was all just a nightmare. We then get a tour of her crib as she does her morning routine and heads out to get on that grind set. Meanwhile, the second storyline takes us back to Max and Icon after the agents following them saw what happened to the helicopter and got the hint, leaving Icon to enter sleep mode and Max to get caught in 4K in a very sus situation. Part 3 opens with Max and Icon walking into a diner, where Icon has a flashback to earlier that day when Max was reminiscing about sunny side up eggs for some reason. This leads to a nice bit of character development before Max remembers that Icon just killed like 4 people. Way to kill the mood, jackass. With the flashback over, Icon shows us how to create anime girls IRL before having a chat with best character. Max, meanwhile, is in the bathroom testing his blood for contaminants, what happened to the explosives, when he decides to call Kirie, who's busy performing an emergency facelift surgery. After listening to her classmate explain why the moon is a hologram, Kirie finally picks up the phone and confesses her love to Max, who reminds her that they're currently on a mission to save the human race. Meanwhile, Icon almost gets blown up by a pair of weebs who are trying to capture her, and that about sums up Internecion Cube Parts 1, 2, and 3. Confused? Good. Let's talk about the lore. Alright, question of the day. What the heck is this cube? Well, I think the answer lies in one character, whose first name we just barely make out through the memory corruptions in Kirie's flashback.
How are you doing?
First name, Cleo. Then, after Kirie wakes up, we see a list of possible last names on her nightstand, the most interesting of which is Dahmer. Now, if you're a fan of Scary Story Time with Liam, the name Cleo Dahmer is probably going to set off a few alarms, mostly because she's an antagonist in both Design and Black Dogs. In a previous video, I mentioned that Design revolves around parasites called left hands, which kill off their hosts and hijack control of their bodies. What I didn't mention is that Black Dogs revolves around a massive hyper-intelligent dog known as the Styx Hound, which has a parasite in its saliva that just so happens to reanimate the corpses of the hound's victims and hijack control of their minds. In both series, Dahmer is a scientist dedicated to researching and containing these parasites. So, if 2 out of the 3 series Dahmer appears in involve parasites that kill off and hijack control from their hosts, shouldn't the third follow the same pattern? After all, Liam said in his goodbye video on SSTWL that he plans on reusing ideas from that channel in his newer content. For example, Halogen Fear, the queen of a siren colony in Yellow Halogen, wants to stop her fellow sirens from hunting humans because, in her eyes, there aren't that many differences between the two. Flash forward to Murder Drones and, after meeting Uzi, N is having second thoughts about the literal mountain of worker drones he slaughtered. His reasoning?
You know, not that I can't wait to keep murdering all these, maybe not so actually different from us worker drones, but...
See the connection? Anyways, I want to share another theory about the cube, and it starts with the sunny side up egg scene in part 3. After Max brings up food, Icon mentions that she also has to, quote, assimilate matter to support my near infinite density and self-replication. Later in the episode, Icon also mentions that she's waiting for Max to let his guard down so she can, quote, consume his heart tissue for my battery. This, along with my other theories, and a reference on Kirie's school desk to something called the biobattery, leads me to believe that the cube is a parasitic entity that survives off human heart tissue and has the ability to assimilate organic and inorganic matter and hijack control of a host body. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely if any of that was true, then we would see the cube infect someone, right? Well... If you pay any attention to Kirie at all ever, you'll notice something's not right with her. But what exactly? Well, I think it all starts in part 2 with Kirie's flashback to the Refinoc break room, where the power cuts out and cubes start dripping from the ceiling. After picking one up, it seems to fuse itself to her flesh before ripping it off her hand. We then see a face eerily similar to Icon's imprint itself onto hers, implying the cube has gained full control. Earlier in that scene, there's also a vending machine that displays the messages, "Welcome back, Kirie," with text art of Icon's face, "Your flesh will be reformed anew," and "We'll peel apart your soul." This, plus an earlier scene that shows a blast door labeled Icon, makes me think that Icon was originally being held at Refinoc, but breached containment before or during Kirie's visit and infected her with the cube. After all, there's boxes labeled with human heart tissue in Kirie's freezer, and a sticky note on her nightstand that mentions human hearts and food in the same bullet point. Speaking of her nightstand, there's also plenty of evidence that the trauma from the incident left Kirie as an emotional and physical wreck. She has reminders telling her to blink, breathe, misspeak, and learn how to smile, all things that regular people do automatically. Plus, her house looks super run down with all the cobwebs, implying that she probably isn't worried about upkeep. Now, let me take a step back to talk about design and a character called the Director. Trust me, it'll be important. You see, the Director's wife was killed by a left hand, and a surrogate daughter got turned into one, leading him to seek revenge against all left hands, which he saw as nothing but mindless killing machines whose human traits were nothing but disguises created by the parasites. Long story short, a character dealing with past trauma holds a grudge against the parasite responsible and believes it to be inhuman. Okay, now listen to Kirie's reaction after Max starts showing sympathy for Icon.
Innocence or humanity you see in the Origin Cube is a perverse disguise born of the mountains of corpses it's consumed.
Kinda similar, isn't it? So, Kirie's quest to destroy the cube and save humanity is really just a revenge quest. That's cool, but what's her plan exactly? Well, her school desk has references to something called an Icon AI hive, a dissociated strain, and a mutual annihilation vector, plus this equation and this list of numbers. Based on everything I've already theorized, I think this means that everyone the cube infects gets absorbed into Icon's AI, but some are able to split off and become part of the dissociated strain. The numbers are labeled with tons and kilotons, making me think that this is the cube's power being measured in terms of how much mass it's consumed. Also, the words mutual annihilation make me think that bringing the Icon AI hive and the dissociated strain together will destroy both, while the equation implies that the dissociated strain needs to be equally or more powerful than Icon. Putting all this together, I think that Kirie wants revenge on the cube for ruining her life, and her plan is to have it destroy itself. There's one more thing though, because on Kirie's desk is a drawing of her and Max, showing Max madly in love with her, and Kirie saying she trusts him to ensure her net zero annihilation, which to me seems like Kirie's planning on her own destruction, which Max would guarantee. Plus, Kirie has a few pictures of Max, ones she either found that had other people who she crossed off, or ones she took herself without him knowing. This, to me, seems like yandere behavior, as if Kirie wasn't crazy enough. Now, why would you bring this up, you ask? Well, I think it's about time I talk about, the protagonist, don't you? This scene from part 2 makes it pretty obvious that Max is trying to reverse engineer Icon, and not, the other thing. Also, in the bathroom scene from part 3, he calls Icon the origin of all evil, and an existential threat to humanity while testing his blood for contaminants, probably to see if Icon infected him. So, Max is risking his life to reverse engineer Icon and figure out how to stop her so he can save humanity, right? Well, not quite. You see, the phone call from part 3 reveals a few things. Number 1, Max is updating Kirie about Icon, implying that they're working together. Number 2, while part 1 shows us Max giving Icon orders as her administrator, he tells Kirie that Icon, quote, bought the administrator's story without question, implying that he made it up and doesn't have any actual power over her. Number 3, Max is starting to show sympathy for Icon because he thinks she doesn't know what she is. Kirie then snaps at him, saying that,
Not human, like us. But I bet it'll still scream when I peel it apart.
Now, you'd think Max would raise an eyebrow at Kirie calling herself human, right? Yes, he would, but only if he knew the truth. You see, I think that Kirie is only giving Max the information that she wants him to know so that he can be a pawn in her revenge quest. This means that not only does Max not know about Kirie being infected, but also that Icon might not be as big of a threat as he thinks she is. So, to summarize, Max, a teenage boy with honest intentions of saving the world, is being manipulated by Kirie for her own goals. And probably also that yandere thing I mentioned earlier. But hold on, I hear you thinking. If Max doesn't know what Icon is, and Icon doesn't know what Icon is, then what is Icon? Well, I am so glad you asked. You see, figuring out what Icon wants is easy. Kill Max, assimilate the universe, satisfy her god complex. She said so in part 3. The hard part is figuring out what she is. In part 1, she mentions wanting to destroy her creator's facility and research to stop them from making any future designs, and the agents chasing her refer to her as, quote, super secret government technology. So, the government created her, right? I mean, Kirie's flashback shows us a containment chamber with her name on it. Well, it's not that simple. In part 3, Max tells Kirie that Icon, quote, truly seems to think it's some sort of government weapon, implying that she's not and the government didn't create her. So, what gives? Well, I think Max is 100% correct. This isn't a government superweapon, but this is. While one would think the cube and the mechanical body are the same since one becomes the other at will, part 2 basically confirms they're not. A quick look inside Icon's body reveals that the cube is still there, positioned where a heart would be. Almost like the cube controls the mechanical body rather than becoming it. There's also references to Icon being programmed, like in part 2 when she said hand-holding is against her user manual. Yet nobody responsible for her creation seems to know what she's capable of. She breaches Refinoc's containment without much effort in Kirie's flashback, and the agents chasing her in part 1 were dumbfounded by what she did to the helicopter. So, hear me out. I think the mechanical body and the cube were originally 2 separate projects, one being a mechanical superweapon program, and the other being research into the cube. Eventually, they realized, probably by freak accident, that the cube consumes human heart tissue to produce energy, and this gave them the bright idea to use the cube to power the superweapon. What they didn't realize, though, was that the cube would hijack control and internalize its programming, just like it would do to a human host. This is why part 3 shows us Icon being clueless about human things like restrooms and sunny-side-up eggs, because she didn't have a human personality to steal information from. It's also why Kirie's flashbacks show Icon having tighter security than any other subject, why the agents were so caught off guard by her abilities, and why she breached Refinoc's containment so easily. So, Icon is a cube that hijacked control of a government superweapon, making her one of the most dangerous, unpredictable things in the world. Alright, but wait, I hear you say. You said earlier that the government created Icon, but you're also saying that Refinoc is containing her. What's up with that? Well, don't worry, I have an answer for that too. To me, Biowaste management sort of makes Refinoc sound like a government agency, kinda like the Postal Service. Plus, the facility seems to be in the Eisenhower Tunnel, which is federal land last I checked. We also know from Kirie's flashbacks that Refinoc's work is way more sinister than the post office. Plus, the agents chasing Icon in part 1 refer to her as super secret government technology that Max just stole. All of this leads me to believe that Refinoc is just a cover organization to disguise the research the government is doing into the cube. Even the people in-universe seem to think so, as when Kofi, the guy who called the moon a hologram, notices that Max isn't showing up to school, he asks Kirie,
You and Refinoc Biowaste abduct Max to the lunar station? Or let me guess, you're still going to deny the moon's a hologram in the first place?
Now, while Icon says in part 1 that Refinoc is doing research into the cube and working on future designs of her, we see signs in Kirie's flashback suggesting that they already had IC-01N up to at least IC-40N, and by the time the series takes place, we have IC-52N and even IC-313N. Wouldn't those be future designs? Well, no. I actually think they came first. You see, Max refers to Icon as the Origin Cube, implying she's the first cube and/or she created the others, hence the Icon AI hive mentioned earlier. What I think happened is that at some point, Refinoc discovered the cube's ability to infect humans, partially inspiring them to use it as a power source for the mechanical body. Icon, being the Origin Cube and the source of the infections, was given a 0 designation, while those created by being infected started with a 1 designation and kept counting up to at least 313. All this together means Refinoc is a government organization designed to hide the research being done into the cube. And now some jackass teenager just stole their ultra-dangerous superweapon, so they're sending every agent they have to get it back. Anyways, that about wraps up what I think has and is happening in Internecion Cube. Now let's talk about what I think will happen. Despite Max reminding himself that Icon is an existential threat to humanity, and Icon repeatedly threatening to kill Max, it's pretty obvious that they're warming up to each other. They both try to cheer each other up in the sunny side up egg scene, from Icon trying to synthesize an egg for Max, and Max taking her mind off it when she fails. Once they get to the diner, Max tells Kirie that he's concerned for Icon's mental state, and Icon gets embarrassed when she tries ordering sunny side up eggs the way Max described them. So, my first prediction is that this trend will continue until the two stop seeing each other as threats and start seeing each other as partners or even friends. Before that happens though, Kirie and Max are going to get closer and closer to achieving their goal of eradicating the cube, but along the way, I think Max is going to start getting more and more suspicious of Kirie until he realizes the truth about Kirie's past and figures out that she just wants revenge. This takes us to the ending, where I predict Kirie is going to be seconds away from exacting her revenge on Icon, and Max is going to have to make a choice between the two. Realizing that Kirie's drive for revenge has made her less human than the government's superweapon, I think Max is going to change sides and protect Icon at the last minute. However, I still think that Max will help Kirie with her final objective, her own net zero annihilation. So you see, Max might be the protagonist of Internecion Cube, but the story isn't about him. It's a story of revenge between a girl struggling to cope with a traumatic past and the government superweapon that made it traumatic, with the fate of humanity caught in the crossfire. Or maybe I'm overthinking all of this and Liam is just doing stuff because it looks cool. Anyways, I know I threw a lot of information into this video, but there's still a lot I haven't figured out. First, there's a timer at Refinoc above Icon's containment chamber counting down from 84 days, 9 hours, and 31 minutes. Second, one of the messages that flashes onto the vending machine during Kirie's flashback says, "Come back to us, Kirie," implying that Icon already knows her, kinda screwing up the timeline I've set up. Third, when Icon exits sleep mode in part 2, we see a display on her face that reads Operation String Godmind not found and booting in safe mode error. Fourth, why does Kirie's cat look infected? If you're a fan of Internecion Cube and want to give me your own theories or feedback on mine, feel free to do so in the comments below or on Discord. Also, if anyone can make this text readable for me, I'd really appreciate it. Anyways, I might make a part 2 of this video if enough of these mysteries get solved, and I'll even throw in all the theories I left out of this one, like IC-52N's past, or Crow and IC-313's motivation as villains. But for now, that's it for this video, so remember to light up that like button, smoke that subscribe button, drop a big old comment, check out some of the videos on the left, and I will see you guys in the next video.